Good evening, mamas. This is Devin with Homeschool House Calls in Professional Home Educator and Homeschool Supermoms. Homeschooling Supermoms. I have the worst time saying the right name, and I don't know why. Susan has not shot me yet because I'm always saying the wrong name and mixing them up. Anyway, so tonight we are talking about homeschooling with disabilities with Heather Colson. I have
Thank you.
known Heather Colson how long?
Oh gosh, 26 years, I think.
Yeah, close to 26 years or around there. We've known each other forever. But she's a homeschool mom. She's graduated 3 and has tons of experience. And your 2 oldest were diagnosed with autism or on the spectrum.
My oldest was diagnosed with high functioning autism. Matthew was on the spectrum but didn't get an official diagnosis, but both of them wrestled with ADHD, sensory issues, things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Heather has always been a huge source of information. If I have a mom contact me with issues and I'm not sure what to do and it's special needs, I send them to Heather. I've tried to talk her into consulting for years because
Mm.
she's just a vast array of information. And she's done the test of time. I mean, she's been here. How many years did y'all homeschool?
Total, all combined, 16 years.
16 years. See, right under me. And the only reason I'm longer is because I started in preschool. She'd be longer.
Mhm.
We're right there. But we always have a great time. We don't see each other enough anymore.
You know,
No,
we
but
don't.
that's okay. We love each other.
We can do Zoom coffee.
Bobby, we need to do that. That would be a lot of fun. But
Awesome.
I would like Heather to start with giving your story and letting them, letting moms hear how things started, how you went through your diagnosis. Because one thing, if you ever want someone to tell you your steps with anything legal, even, I mean, she's just a great source of information. And find, you will not find it in our group anymore. Her first workshop, this is like a repeat. You will not find that one in the groups anymore in my group, Professional Home Educator, but you can find that on the website in the next month. I'm in the process of moving all the old ones there so that they're easier to find. So you can go back and watch that one too. But she's just, I mean, I'm going to try to get the resources over there too before we get everything done. But anyway, that's where to find it. So start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning. Okay, so we had 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
Eric is our oldest. He's the one with the official diagnosis, the high functioning autism diagnosis. So we noticed that when he was about a year and a half old, 2 years old, there were just some social indicators that something was a little bit off. And I started trying to have conversations with his pediatrician then about that and like, hey, I'm noticing he really doesn't like to play with other kids. He's going off by himself. He complains with certain clothes and foods and things like that. Or he would just spontaneously gag and vomit with chunky foods or something like that. And the doctor was like, no, 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 no. It's your first child. You're just making things bigger than it really needs to be. Pick your battles. He'll be fine. Move on. So we played that game until Eric was about 7.5, and then he was having a lot of trouble with ADHD. He finally got his ADHD diagnosis when he was in the end of kindergarten, beginning of first grade, and he was enrolled in private school. It was a family administered school that was through our church. So we had a lot of support system there at the school that could help us or run interference if we couldn't get there in time, things like that. And so about the end of kindergarten, he really, really struggled through kindergarten, sitting still, paying attention, behavior issues, outbursts, things like that. And, I'd sit there and talk to him, and it's like, everybody kind of immediately jumped to the conclusion that it was an obstinate issue, a defiance issue, an anger issue, all these things. And when I would talk to him later and try to get to the root of the issue, I realized, I think we're all getting this wrong. I think we're all interpreting this wrong. But they were the professionals, they were the teachers, they were the ones with the education and the degrees, so I deferred to them. And then we got his autism, not his autism, his ADHD diagnosis at the end of his kindergarten, beginning of his first grade year. We realized we needed to start maybe making some food changes, dietary changes, because we noticed that he would have reactions to, like, if he ate too much stuff with red dye or preservatives. I know it sounds crazy, but Cheetos would set him off. He would just go crazy, couldn't moderate his behavior, keeping him under control. And so we started with, we did the ADHD diagnosis. Then we started noting the sensory issues. So I asked my pediatrician if he would just humor me and send us for a sensory integration dysfunction evaluation, just to see if it was an issue. A friend of mine, her son with PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, it is on the autism spectrum, had been diagnosed with sensory integration dysfunction, and she and her therapist were both having red flags going, Eric's got some of this going on. So we did the sensory evaluation. Sure enough, he was off the charts on tactile, proprioceptive, vestibular. Google those terms. It'll explain what all that is involved. And so we started physical therapy with that. So ADHD explained some portion of it. Sensory integration explained another portion of it. We had this huge portion over here that was affecting our everyday life and just stressing all of us to no end. Couldn't put a finger on it, couldn't explain it. I went to his therapist one day, and we had struggled to get there even on time that day. And I just broke down in tears, and I was like, hey, I need to know what this big piece is. Like, what do I do with this? What is it? How do I address it? How do I help my son get past this? And I said, you've got to find me somebody, because there was nobody in Mobile. Again, the pediatrician was like, you're just making, something out of nothing. So she found me a behavioral neurologist in Montgomery. I got Eric's records, I got labs, we got all his documentation from birth onward. We went up there, we sat down for our appointment, and 3 hours later, he looks at my husband and he's like, so what do you think it is? And my husband's like, I don't know. That's why we're here. And he looks at me and he goes, what do you think it is? And I had been doing some little backdoor research on behavioral problems, learning disabilities, things like that, and had come across Asperger's syndrome. And I'm just reading this information like at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out what's going on with my child. And it just something just clicked with me. And I was like, I told the doctor, I said, I think he has Asperger's syndrome. And he goes, you're 100% correct. And he said, right now, everything is severe with him. He's raw, emotionally, mentally, physically, everything is just raw. And we need to really work hard to get him under control. So we wrestled with, okay, you kind of go through this grieving process, I guess, because your perceptions, your ideas, your dreams, what you thought your kid's life was going to look like is not that way. So you kind of go through this grieving and recentering process of, I'm not going to be under this. We're going to be above this. How do we find a solution? How does everybody move forward at a good, healthy rate? We decided to, after a lot of prayer, we decided that where Eric was at in private school was really not the best for him. And we didn't want to put him in public school at the time because, again, Eric's 24. So way back then, autism was just hitting the national news. Asperger's syndrome was like, what the heck is that? Why are you calling your kid a burger, or whatever, other terms. And so explaining that even to family members was just like, oh my gosh, they thought that we were, they thought we were just nuts. But anyway, and then finding treatments for it was, and especially in Alabama, was just, you couldn't even create something at that time, So we just prayed about it and, felt like that we were supposed to go the homeschool route, at least with Eric, keep the other two in private school just because they needed to have a good day, good progress, focus, being able to enjoy school, enjoy hanging out with some friends, doing things during the day that was not so much living, eating, and breathing a disability all day long.
Yeah.
Because disabilities in families don't just affect that child, they affect everybody in that family to different levels. And especially younger kids and younger siblings, they know that something's not quite right, with maybe a member in the family, and they don't know how to process that. And if they're living in it, staying in it constantly, they can get really overwhelmed. And that's what happened with Matthew. Matthew started developing some anxiety symptoms, and we had to address those at that point. But we pulled Eric home, and we started trying to do typical school. We did the typical pattern, the typical schedules, you write with this, this is how you do math. And I just picked up where he left off grade wise. He was supposed to be in second grade with his curriculum that I had got from the school whenever we pulled him, and realized my child, he didn't even understand what he was looking at. One. He'd had a lot of behavior issues to where he would end up sitting in the hall all day long and get extra work sent home that he had to complete before he was allowed back into the classroom the next morning.
Oh, yeah.
So that in his mind, he was processing at school as a punishment too.
Yeah.
Right. So kids, are immediately going to shut down. And he did. We didn't realize we were dealing with depression with him. We were dealing with low self-esteem. We were dealing with a wounded spirit. And a lot of people may not understand what that is. But when a child is constantly getting in trouble and they're not getting any praise, any encouragement, and just everything is hard on the Eastern and Western fronts, that kid internalizes and shuts down, and they're not thriving. So when we pulled him out, then we started seeing the gravity and the depth of all these different areas. And it was overwhelming, not only to him, but to us. I mean, I don't have a college degree. I don't have a certification in teaching and education. I'm a mama. I'm a mama who really loves my kid and wants the best for my kid. And I'm a Christian. And I'll tell you now, there is no way on this planet that I would have gotten through any of that with him without being a Christian and having a prayer life and bringing my kid to the Lord every morning and saying, God help me, what do I do? So we just little baby steps here and there. We kept up with the physical therapy. We kept up with the ADHD treatment. We changed a lot of things in his diet. We changed our schedules in the house. We made sure that we had a bedtime hygiene, helping everybody wind down. Had to learn appropriate boundaries. Didn't quite have that growing up with my parents, so I had to create boundaries with my kids and follow them myself. But just, structure. I didn't realize how hungry these kids are for structure, because everything else in their life is just chaotic and crazy. And they don't know how to develop that security. They're looking at you to develop that pattern and that security so that they have a safety net during the day. They have expectations. And that was the crazy thing with Eric. When he was when he first started to talk, he would always say, "What are we doing today? What's next?" And if I told him, okay, we're going to the post office, we're going to the grocery store, and we're going to the bank, then by golly, it better happen in that order. And that's what we're doing, because he'll tell me, you said we're doing this, this, and this. And then he would be like, no extra, right, Mom? We're going home, no extra. And if I had to throw in, well, we need to go to the bread store, or we need to, no extra, you said. So, anyway, so started getting those things under control, and then I started having to hunt curriculums. And then we realized, like I said, Matthew's anxiety issues started becoming evident to us, and we realized he wasn't able to focus on at school because he's worried about his brother at home. Or if we had to leave and go out of state for tests or whatever like that, Matthew was worried about that all day long. So at the end of that year, Michael's like, you know what? Just pull them all home. You know what to do with Eric now. He's making successes. He's doing great. Just bring them all home. They just need to be with each other. And it was the hardest thing we did, but it was the best thing we did. Yeah. So, and then our adventure bloomed from there.
Do we want to answer some questions? I know we've had several, and you covered some stuff that you've done that I see that that they asked. Okay, mamas, I've seen some in the comments, and I'm gonna get there in just a minute. Just bear with me. I'm not ignoring y'all, and I know some of y'all had trouble getting in and seeing the thing. Hopefully y'all see it now. But here's one. let's see. Okay, so this mama says, I think my biggest question is nutrition ideas to help ADHD when he is a very picky eater. Texture issues turn into anxiety and fear fits.
So
So,
I'm going to say right there that that child probably has some sensory integration issues, and that's going to be in the tactile and the proprioceptive. Eric had texture issues. He would gag with foods. He didn't like if it had high vinegar content that, you know, everybody else can't really taste, but oh, he picked up on it. So you might want to Google or go to YouTube and find sensory integration dysfunction, or search tactile dysfunction or the proprioceptive dysfunction. So, so the challenge is always to find good foods, nutrition foods that they're not going to object to, that gets them the vitamins and minerals that they need, the nutrition they need, but also working with their objections to not create anxiety issues for all of you at meal times. So I would first, like I said, research those terms, find out that information, and then find out if there's some alternatives. You know, make it a fun thing at dinner of, hey, we're going to try a different food today, or this is the featured food for dinner tonight, and just introduce new foods, new vegetables, new fruits, but make it a fun thing, you know, and ask them, and this kind of leads to later, of give a book report on what they thought about that food, you know, if it was crunchy, if it was sour tasting, sweet tasting, whatever that is, and it'll make it more approachable, and hopefully more accepted. But and you can also Google, whenever you search that for the tactile dysfunction, there may be some mamas on some of the YouTube videos with sensory integration dysfunction that gives ideas of, okay, if your child objects to grapes, you know, really, is that something that's, it's not the end of the world if they object to grapes, you know, try to find a softer food, things like that. So I will say this, though, that a diet heavy in wheat products, dairy products, processed foods, those are actually going to create a worse issue for you, because the body creates an addiction, a chemical addiction, one, to things that are highly processed and has chemicals and stuff in it. So the body is going to continually want to go back to that food to satisfy that addiction, and interjecting a healthy food, it's you're fighting yourself on it.
yeah.
So getting those junk foods and those junk drinks and stuff out of the house, out of your child's diet and routine and habit, will help a lot. And it kind of curbs some of those cravings maybe that they're fighting against you with. But also the wheat and the dairy and the highly processed foods creates more internal inflammation and upset in the system, to where it creates more behavior issues, more anxiety issues. It's all just a big thing that works together. So those might be some different areas to address.
Would you consider, I know there's a cookbook called Sneaky Shelf where they're sneaking veggies and fruit into weird things. Wouldn't you think that would be possibly a good idea? At least
Absolutely.
until they start eating easier.
Yeah, where it becomes easier. Oh, I snuck stuff in all the time.
Even mine, you know, Lacey is like on a only wanting Hot Pockets jag. So, you know, maybe some Sneaky Chef type stuff to get a broader amount of nutrition, maybe a good idea.
Absolutely. I did that with spinach brownies. And then we did, I think, zucchini bread. I think you gave me that recipe for the zucchini bread.
Did. We have an awesome zucchini bread. I remember with my kids when they were little, I'd make spaghetti and I'd put extra veggies.
Now that was your idea. Yeah, okay, and that worked.
I could have totally been the Sneaky Chef people. Totally.
So now Eric begs for that, though. I'm telling you, because it's drowned in spaghetti sauce. I called it chicken cacciatore, or we'll do turkey cacciatore. And I'm like chopping up a whole thing of celery, onions, bell peppers, all of that. But by the end of it, it tastes like spaghetti sauce. So he doesn't care.
Like, I would take them and put them through, like you can blitz them in the food processor. They're teeny tiny. You cook them up. They don't know you've added extra. But
dude loves spinach. What is that? Spinach artichoke dip now.
Oh my God.
And he calls them dirt carrots. Okay. So how I did that one is we went to a U-Pick. We went to a U-Pick garden, and
Uh-huh.
they grew carrots one year. And he was not giving up trying to get this carrot out of the ground. I said, however many carrots you get out of the ground, Mama will cook for you. And he was like, on it. So he dug up about 5 or 6 carrots. I took them
Oh
home,
my
washed them,
goodness.
cut them up, butter, a little bit of honey in there, and he calls them his dirt carrots. Still to
Oh,
this day, 24 years old.
oh, what a good memory, though.
Yeah.
Okay, here is another one. Okay, my oldest son has ADHD, dysgraphia, and we believe he has dyslexia.
Still in the process.
Works best for him to learn to read. This is our first year. This is their first year. I know all about reading is supposed to be good for dyslexia, and I know there is Nessie.com that's supposed to help with reading. So those are two.
Yeah, I had seen somebody had used quite a bit Explode the Code.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's specifically for dyslexia, but I've heard of Time for Learning. And then there was another one that I've heard of too, but it's a program, so I really don't know much about it, but I've heard the name a lot, is findingjoyinthejourney.net.
Yeah.
So those were really good, but
Good
there's
ones to-
some resources for that. It's homeschoolingwithdyslexia.com.
Mhm.
There was the timeforlearning.com, allaboutlearningpress.com/dyslexia. There was Explode the Code, Calvert Education. I've heard of that one a lot. But those you might want to check for ratings and stuff on that curriculum. And learningabledkids.com.
Mhm.
So yeah, my brother has dyslexia and dysgraphia, but we did not find that until he was almost graduating from high school.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but now he's going for his second doctorate. He just got admitted into medical school. He interviewed with 2 different schools, so he just got accepted into another program, and he's moving north to North Texas. He's in San Antonio right now, and he's super excited. And I am so proud of him, because this kid who struggled so much, they said he had ADHD, they said he had learning disabilities. They couldn't even diagnose the dyslexia or the dysgraphia. They were just basically kind of telling my mom
Yeah,
that he was delayed.
it wasn't really a thing because I am like 99% sure that I have dyscalculia. But
Mm-hmm.
they called it math LD when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
they would throw us all in the same room. Didn't matter what was wrong. You were all together. But when I first saw a list and I went through there, I'm like, I'm hitting every box. And I'm like, this is everything I dealt with math. And I'm like, yeah, I have dyscalculia. I probably have it all.
And honestly, it's very common. If you have dyslexia, you very likely have some form or fashion of the dysgraphia and the dyscalculia and
Mhm.
all of it. John was doing, they labeled him the same way, the math LD, because he was doing multiplication like long addition, or like addition,
Uh-huh.
like long column addition. And they were like, why are you doing this? He's like, this is how you do it. And he was getting everything wrong, and he couldn't do the multiplication, things like that. His multiplication tables, couldn't get it, never got it. And so basically they were telling mom that he was learning disabled. And
Mhm.
mom's like, no, he's not. This is an intelligent kid. And she forced them to do
Yeah.
a IQ test. Dude comes out between 150 and 180. And then now, he's got 2 MDs, about to have the second MD. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I love when I hear stuff like that. So here's another one. Resources for high school students was well, we just said that. Let's see. No, this is another one. Okay.
This one.
So resources for high school students with severe dyslexia, ADD, would be most helpful. Not an auditory learner. So with that in mind, ideas for curriculum pointers would be helpful. Anything for college prep. Now, mamas, if you see your question and it doesn't exactly look right, they only let me use so many words, and so I kind of tweaked.
So that's interesting, though, not an auditory learner. So I would assume auditory processing delay, language processing delay. So yeah, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. I would encourage hands-on things. Eric had the auditory processing delay as well. So we ended up doing a lot of reinforcing field trips, even when he got older.
Mhm.
He always would ask why. like why. He wanted to know the why behind something, you know, why it had to be that way, why it worked that way. And that's great because these kids are creative. They're usually, a lot of them end up being inventors, entrepreneurs. They got to figure it out. They reverse engineer it and then make it better when they put it back together. But I would do a lot of hands-on stuff. I would see if there's some high school hands-on curriculum. I know Weaver curriculum. I loved it when we did it. It's a unit study. They do have a high school supplement to the base product. So the base product is from kindergarten to 5th grade, and then you add a supplement on top of that that carries you into high school. I did not use the high school version of that with Eric. We kind of, I know Devin and I talked about this before we would get into the next year. We would always sit down and we would just pray, and we would, you know, really evaluate where the kids were, where we hoped for them to be for the next year, or at least just biting off on chunks 3 months, 6 months at a time, and evaluate if the current curriculum or the current things we were using were really meeting those goals and needs, or if we needed to change something. And, you know, God was always good with us. We would pray and just ask him, you know, if we needed to change it or do something different, to please bring that to our attention, whether it was through a conversation, whether it was through a website, whether it was through a bookstore and we just stumbled across it, you know, or somebody giving us something, you know, because I love generous mamas that help out other mamas. And it just always seemed to come at us right when we needed it to come at us. I loved learning language arts through literature.
Yeah.
Eric was a reluctant reader. Ooh, he fought me to no end on that. The physical therapist used, it's applied behavioral analysis, where you're working to reinforce positive behaviors and you're starving and kind of not neglecting, but you're not giving that same attention incentive to negative behaviors. You're really wanting to focus more on them doing the good things and reinforcing the good things. So she found Boxcar Kids and some good Hardy Boys adventures and things like that that would kind of appeal to his creative side, to get him start reading a little bit more. And it worked, thank God. But also, see, the auditory learner, I would be surprised though if even still, even as a high schooler, he would like to hear you read to him. Now, kind of got to weigh that, make sure that you're not taking the burden of his schoolwork on you. You know, he's got to have some accountability and responsibility with that. But Eric, even as an adult, liked to hear me read. And so I would do, like, I'll read a couple of paragraphs, you read a couple of paragraphs, and then we'll meet in the middle and see, you know, what you got from that. But yeah, I just try to find hands-on things, try to engage him. If he's pulling away to where he's distracted, then that might be an indicator when we need to find a different curriculum that would engage him, or different activities that would engage.
And Blue Collar Homeschool is a good resource for looking for curriculum, especially hands-on stuff. So that's a good resource for mamas. Let's see. I want to know what happens for them after high school graduation. So how about your boys?
That's a good question.
I think, you know, with any child, it could go any which way. It just depends on what they're interested in. I do believe that they can move forward. And I really feel like when I read this one, I feel like I can kind of hear the mama's heart. And there's a lot of worry about what's going to happen after high school graduation. And I believe God has a plan for every child. So I do want to say that. But tell us about your boys, because I know they came over big obstacles.
Yes, and both of them. Yeah, both of them have. So Matthew also has some of the auditory processing delay. He had some of the language issues as well. I highly suspected very early on that he had dyslexia as well, but his wasn't as severe as my brother's. And there were some workarounds that we were able to do with him. The mama who's having the struggle with the reading, you might want to try a sensory tool where you put like a weighted blanket or a weighted pillow or something like that in their lap while they're reading or doing their schoolwork, or maybe even sitting on one of those yoga balls, bouncy balls. It kind of diffuses some of the extra energy and the attention that are, all around the room to, I got to sit still and not fall off the back of the stall. It helps with the organization, I guess that's the word that I'm trying to think of. But so that's where we go back to the prayer and the asking the Lord, and seeking the Lord for each year, or just for 3 months, 6 months block at a time. But also I would recommend at grade 8, grade 9, sit down with your child, have a conversation with them. What do you like? What do you see yourself doing when you get older? It may be going to the mission field. Okay, well, there's going to be a totally different thought pattern in getting him ready to go to the mission field. It may be like Eric at 9, who said, I want to work on airplanes. He liked tools. He liked working with his hands. Well, he's doing that. So, yeah, and that's what he went to school for. Matthew he's my, and see, everybody is unique, like a fingerprint. And we've had that conversation before too, my fingerprints are not going to look like you. Your fingerprints are not going to look like mine. That means that also what the plans that God has for me, or the interests and the desires and the goals that I have, are not the same that you have, and vice versa. And who says that a child has to look a certain way, have a certain career, have a certain amount of degrees, education, whatever that is, by the time they're a certain age to be successful? The most important thing in us with our having this opportunity to homeschool them or have them at home is relationship. And right now, especially this year with COVID, and so many kids feel so disengaged and not connected and isolated, it is even more critically important to develop a good relationship with your child. I don't care if my children ever, I do want them to go to school and college and have a degree. I do want that, simply because, and I have to be careful that I'm not living out my dreams and my wishes, my wants through my kids. But like for Hannah, she'll be the first girl on both sides of our family to have a college degree. But that was something her and I talked about, and that was something that she wanted to pursue and do. And I said, okay, I will make that dream happen. Me and Jesus, we're going to do this, and we'll make that dream happen. But that may not be your child's goal. So you have to sit down with that child and find out what makes that child tick, what makes that child passionate, what are they interested in, and then help them to facilitate that goal, because they're going to grow as they pursue that goal as well. And if they get halfway into it and realize that, no, that's not what I thought it was. Okay, well, let's reevaluate that. We all do that, and help aim that arrow towards that goal that has a target in mind.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Here is another one. Mine is ADHD and autistic, very hyper, and doesn't like to sit still. Now, I know this mama, they're younger. What are some ways to help get the energy out, or even incorporate work into physical movement to help get that energy out?
Yeah, my favorite. Okay, so in the morning, we would get up, we would get breakfast, we would do devotion with each other, but sometimes they just didn't want to sit still. So, that's fine. If you're going to turn upside down, hang off the couch, that's fine, as long as it's quiet and it's not affecting somebody else being able to hear. Then they started getting a little bit bigger. So I would say ages 6, 7, and 9. So we would go for a walk in the morning before we started our schoolwork. And it's a bright, fresh, crisp morning. We got the puppy with us. We're getting the energy out. And then during the day, they're, especially after lunch, they're going to get a little more groggy after eating. But give them, you do 2 subjects with mom, I'll give you a 5-minute free time break. If you want to run downstairs, if you want to go outside and play, give the activity rewards, or we'll go to the park. We'll meet some friends there and we'll play. And, you stay responsible with your schoolwork this week. On Friday, we'll have a half a day play day. If you remember back to when you were in school at the time, the teachers would do the same thing too. On Friday, half day play time. But, and then therapy type tools. There's, I wrote that down. Where was that? It was a book resource, Building Bridges Toolbox, Building Bridges. And it gives you like silly putty. It gives you certain exercises you can do, like take a 5-minute exercise break where they do jumping jacks and sit-ups, or, something like that, or challenges, sprints, back to the backyard and to the front yard, or going to get the mail and bringing the mail in, or taking the trash can out, but make it fun. How quick can you do it now? So yeah, there's all different kinds of ideas, or, even like with some of the math stuff, if they're younger, you could, who can give me 5 jumping jacks? And if you give me 5 jumping jacks, then what and what does that make? Add it together. So just try to be creative with them on that.
Okay, so here is another one. They still don't have a formal diagnosis, but the pediatric behavioral specialist says 100% the more I work with him, he's autistic. Doctor says, well, I don't want to label him. So what do you think about that?
I know where labels can help, but I know where labels can also hurt. So he's saying, from what I gather, that he is on the spectrum, but that he's concerned in labeling him that may limit him. I don't know this doctor. I don't know their track record. I see both points. I see where if you're trying to get services, yes, you need a formal diagnosis. You need something in paper, in writing from a physician. But maybe he's trying to indicate that his current level of function may not stay that way. He may be able to progress beyond that, to where by a certain point it may not affect him as much. I'm going to be hopeful and say that that's what he's probably indicating. So I'm going to assume this child is probably early adolescence, maybe 7 to 9. And that's the best time that you can really work on some different things, working on life skills, dressing themselves, bathing themselves, recognizing expressions. Carol Kranowitz, she has a social skills picture book for kids, and it discusses different emotions, body language, things to recognize with people. And then the Building Bridges Toolbox, that also has some things in there about brushing teeth, schedules, check off lists, because they can't remember more than 1 or 2 things at a time. Even kids with ADHD, don't give them more than 1 or 2 tasks at a time to do. You're just going to overwhelm them and they'll get frustrated. But it's going to take intensive work, but it's not that they're not ever going to get to those accomplishments. It'll just take them a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think the next comment is from her too, and she said he can't fix his own food. So I'm assuming he's older, and it's because of sensory issues.
So I went to an amazing autism workshop that it was just a gift that I got to go there. It was actually for like Alabama Department of Rehab Services officials and things like that who work in the services, like Children's Rehab Department and things like that, worked in those service offices throughout the state. And I got invited as a mom to come and sit with them and sit in on their workshops and stuff. But there was a psychologist who was working at UAB that she was trying to give suggestions to different medical personnel of how they can counsel their parents of things to do. And she said that she worked with adults who were fully autistic through her program at the school in her research study, and found that there were 20-year-olds that still could not bathe independently, or make a sandwich, or get dressed by themselves, or cross the street by themselves. And these are 20-year-old adults, So it takes regular, repetitive, consistent, not frustrated, which I know that's easier said than done, action over and over and over again through time before that pattern starts setting up a habit internally in them. And yes, there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days, and there's going to be celebratory days and there's going to be days where you feel discouraged, but don't live in that discouragement. But it's just go back to consistent. We're just going to keep doing this until we all get it. And I know you're going to be in your sleep teaching your child how to button their pants, or how to make a sandwich, or how to look both ways before crossing the road. But you'll be happy that you did when you finally get to that accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah, and life skills are important. I taught life skills way back in the day before I married. I worked at a small school, and they were autistic and mainly autistic. And I taught that was the main thing I taught was life skills. And I'm a big believer in it that no matter where, even if your child is not special needs, life skills stand the test of time. It's something they need until we die. So yeah, make the
Even
bed,
answering the phone. Hmm.
answering the phone, making the bed, making a sandwich. Just do the same sandwich every day, even if they don't want to eat it. You can always freeze some of them.
knowing
Freeze.
knowing what's appropriate if somebody knocks on the front door,
Yeah.
don't invite them into the house and your mama's in the shower. you know don't
Mine was,
unlock the front door at 11 o'clock at night and walk out on the front lawn.
yeah.
Just, but it's we used to, my uncle brought just a great term into my life and I loved it, so we adopted that. But I was like, we have to debrief you. So don't ever assume that your child has thought ahead to any situation that you're going into and knows how to appropriately act.
Yeah.
Okay. You will set you and them up for failure with that. But we would always have a pre debriefing and a post debriefing, because even in neurotypical families, when you get together for holidays, Uncle Jim or Grandpa or somebody gonna say something that did not need to be said, and your child does not need to ever repeat on this side of glory. Okay, so we would have a pre-briefing and like,
Yeah.
okay, when you go in, it is appropriate to say, hello, how are you? Did you have a nice day? Is there something I can help with? Would you like me to help you clean up? Thank you so much for that dinner. That was very good. And obviously, the older they get, the bigger the conversation or the comment, but just thank you. We enjoyed being here. Or, can I help? Something like that. But it has to be repetitive. And at first, Eric would have so many outbursts in public that we locked down and we stopped going out. And
Mm.
even to just like McDonald's, or just sometimes we would meet at a casual restaurant with Michael's family for maybe once a month for dinner or something like that. And Eric would have so many emotional outbursts during that. I spent most of my time in the bathroom handling issues, that it was just embarrassing and overwhelming. And we just thought, no, we're not going to do this. I mean, even with, in the beginning, homeschool field trips, he would have behavioral temper tantrums and issues, and other parents didn't understand it. And they would laugh and snicker at me behind, the door.
Well,
And that hurt me and made me shut down. And so we pulled back. And that was dangerous. That was not only dangerous for me, for him, but that was also dangerous for those families, because they didn't understand what was going on and they needed to. We all need to have an awareness that we are a part of a community, and we
yeah.
need to support each other and
Yes.
help each other, not judge and criticize each other. Because I don't know your struggle, but I know I will have my own struggle one day. And so
Yeah.
I don't need to mock and make fun of what you're going through. I need to try to be empathetic and understanding. And
Yeah.
if I can help, I need to help. If I can't, I'm going to say a prayer for you right there. Um, but anyway, so we pulled back, and that created a kind of closed off environment. And what I didn't realize is that was suffocating all of us. That was not giving us opportunities to put
Yeah.
in practice what we were learning and doing at home, so that he could practice and exercise, and
Hmm.
practice makes perfect. Or
Yes.
run into challenges where you're exposing areas that need to be addressed and you would never know. And it could be a safety issue.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's see. Um, let's see. I'm looking to see. Okay, this one, mine is 7 now, and we do 30 minutes of work, less if they complete it early, and then 10 minutes of prepaid play. I can also toss in random brain breaks. That's a great, see that she was answering our question with us. Y'all are so awesome, mamas. Awesome. This is kind of what I do with Lacey now. She gets she gets like 15 minutes of work, and then she has to she gets 10 minutes of play. So That
And
works for
we would try, when Eric got a little bit older and they started getting into some more heavy subjects too, we would, we agreed we would tackle the hardest one first and
me.
get that over with. And then it was all downhill from there, you know,
Yeah.
or space it, a more challenging one and then an easier one to handle, more challenging, easier. And I would try to get everything that I could done in the first half of the day, because
Mhm.
once it ran past the afternoon, that's not good for them. That's not good for you. Everybody's patience is done. So you
Yeah.
really don't need 2 hours for one subject.
Yes, somebody said they do frequent breaks, so now I don't feel so bad. Yeah, don't feel bad. Don't ever feel bad. You have to work what works for your family. There's no right or wrong schedule,
Mm-mm.
and curriculum is nothing but a tool. And if it's not working, you chunk that out and you find another tool because it's something in your toolbox. It's
Yep.
not. Mamas often feel like the curriculum is in control of their house, and that's not true. You are
Mm-mm.
in control,
Nope.
mama. Do what works for your family. And if it's not working, then you switch to something else.
Yeah. And there's sometimes too, you just need to take a break from those books. I'm
Yes.
telling you, because you start losing sight of, again, this is relationship. You are a
Yes.
family first, you
Making
know.
connection.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that I love, 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 love this book. I don't know if you can even still find it, but it's Lisa Welchell's Creative Correction. And that gave me so much mental health breaks with trying to get discipline, handle discipline issues, because she just comes from a creative mindset with that. And I know I've shared this story before, and I probably shared it on the other video, but she was dealing with her oldest son who had ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he was saying harsh words to his younger siblings. And she had struggled and struggled and struggled trying to get him to quit saying those harsh words. She's like, you're wounding their spirit. You don't understand that, you know, and you're hurting them and you're hurting your relationship and your future relationship with them. And she came up with this idea one day. She, every time he would say an ugly word to his brother or sister, she would send him outside to Daddy's workshop, and he had to put a nail, hammer a nail into a block of board that Daddy had laying around in the workshop. And
Mm-hmm.
after the end of the week, then he had to go out every time he said something, and he had to pull one of those nails out. So then he had this block of wood that had all these holes in it. And she said, every time you say something ugly to your brother and your sister, this is what you're doing to their heart and their spirit. And you're hurting them and wounding them. You can't make that wood fill that hole back in. Once it's there, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that finally impacted him and he realized what he was doing. But man, her book is chocked full of creative ideas to reach your child without, you know, having to constantly fuss at them
Yeah.
and you know, really get onto them, you know, reinforcing negative emotions and
Yeah.
feelings and stuff
It's
like
a
that,
good
but
book.
finding a positive way to give creative discipline. Because I mean, even the word says our Father chastens us because he loves us. So discipline has to be an act of love, not as an act of anger or
Yeah.
frustration.
I like the fact it finds another way because it's like I can stand and say, get this done, get this done, get this done, but it's not hitting here. But if I find a creative way to show them why it needs to be done, then
Hmm.
yeah, that's a good book. That one's on my shelf. I have that one.
I love that book.
Yeah. I actually had it when my first four were little, and then I re picked it up when I had Lisa because I didn't have it anymore.
There's Yeah, and there's another one that I did too when Eric got a little bit older, because he needed to understand that even if he had a diagnosis, he was still the older brother and he still had a relationship responsibility to his siblings. And
Yeah.
then I needed his siblings to understand, even though your brother has autism and he's frustrating to you, you have a relationship responsibility to him
Yes.
as your brother. And God wants you to love him. He's going to need your love and support and your understanding. So it's called Making Brothers and Sisters Best Friends.
Okay. That's
Um,
a good one.
I can't remember who the author is. It's a family who wrote it, and there's different stories that they present throughout of how they each came to the understanding of how they could be a better brother or sister
Yeah.
to their other siblings, and it was great. And my kids loved it.
Okay. So if y'all got more questions, you can post. We have some time. But my takeaway for this is connection. You
Mhm.
need that connection. A diagnosis can help, but it doesn't always help.
Right.
sometimes it can help you know how to deal with whatever you're dealing with, but it doesn't
But
always.
don't let that, right.
Don't
Don't let
let
that box
it.
define them.
It's a tool, not just like the curriculum. A diagnosis is only a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It can help you know what to do. It should not be something that makes you drown.
Right.
And I think that that's one thing I'd like mamas to know. Don't drown. You're
And
not by
for
yourself.
us in the early days with Eric's diagnosis, and you don't realize it until you kind of get past it or till you kind of have it crash in your face, is we lived under the diagnosis. We lived in the parameters of the diagnosis until
Mm,
I finally got sick of the diagnosis and said, no, my kid is worth more. My child is valuable. My child is going to be successful, is going to be an overcomer. And then we started living beyond the diagnosis and above the diagnosis, because that's where we tend to, we we allow ourselves and we allow our kids to be defined by that, and then we start living by the parameters and the in that enclosure. This is the boundaries of this diagnosis, and we stop thinking outside of that.
yeah, I don't know if it's me or her. Are you there? Are you back?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
you were glitchy for a minute. I didn't know if it was me or you. But okay, here. This is one. I never told my son he has autism. I've never discussed it. I'm not sure if it's good or bad. I just never wanted him to use it as an excuse. What do you
And I
think?
understand that point. I understand that point, but at the same time, if it is something that is impacting his life, I don't want him to it affect his self-esteem of, why can't I ever get this, or why do I struggle with this, or why is this hard for me, and think something is wrong with him. It's not that something is wrong with him, even with an autism diagnosis. He was wonderfully created by the Lord. God had a plan and a purpose, even with autism.
Hmm.
And so if he has, I don't know how old he is. I'm assuming maybe he's probably preteens or teens. Um, it, it's all in how you present it. Okay. I
Hmm.
have challenges, I have weaknesses, and I have
Yeah.
strengths. And, but I don't allow my weaknesses to be an
Yeah.
excuse for certain behaviors. I allow my weaknesses to keep me humble, um, to help me always strive to be better, do better, or to
Hmm.
risk taking on another challenge. So that's all in that mindset of living beneath it, with it, or above it. And he's in overcoming that first challenge of understanding his diagnosis and how that could impact him, because he does need to know how that could impact him. That's safety and wisdom too.
Yeah.
If I can't run 5 miles because that's a personal weakness, and I get out and try to run 5 miles, I may put myself in the hospital. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. So it is safety and wisdom for him to understand that. But it's all in how you present it. If you present it as a negative and as a detriment, or something that's, malfunctioning with him, then he's going to view it that way. Um, but I do think that at a certain age and stage in life, he does need to have that understanding, because when you start getting into more complex relationships and he's not processing or understanding what people are trying to communicate with him, or um, talk to him about, that might create some problems going forward.
Yeah. Let's see. Allie said the thought of changing her son's diet is overwhelming on top of everything else. How do I add it? I think I would start with a sneaky chef. Somebody else also suggested Bluebird Therapy. They're in Mobile, and Allie's in Mobile. Um, that's let's see there. That's a good place to start. But I mean, I would start with Sneaky Chef. But I can get that it can be overwhelming, because I know they haven't had a diagnosis long.
Okay.
So she's done fabulous. I always tell her that, and I know she probably thinks it's embarrassing, but Allie has really, really done an awesome job.
Good.
She reminds
Well,
me of another Heather Colson.
thank you.
Really does. She will be
So
Heather Colson in 17
in the
years.
future, I will pass down the torch to her.
Really. Yeah, I
So
love
for
it.
us, allergy testing, that was our slap in the face of, we needed dietary changes. And you want to talk about overwhelming. He was allergic to like 20 different foods. And at first we're trying to eliminate everything, and that was overwhelming. And we're like, you know what? Let's just add one thing back at a time and just see what
Mm.
he can tolerate and what he can't. So we definitely know his things are wheat, dairy, certain types of nuts, and the processed foods. So, it's just like with anything else. Just try one thing at a time, and just give that time and space, see how they respond, see if things improve. Just one thing at a time,
Yeah. So, I mean, you could start with eliminating wheat, just,
Mhm.
just wheat, and maybe not even all wheat, but I mean, just pick one thing. Don't
Mhm.
do everything.
Or even start with a food diary. Write down the things that they're eating during the day, each meal. And, typically kids, if they're going to have a reaction to something, if it's a massive allergy, they're going to react within hours. If it's a slow buildup allergy, progressive over time, then it may take 2 to 3 days of eating a particular food over and over again before they start having some behavioral reactions to things or external reactions to things. So a food diary can help you track down what is the big problem.
Yeah. Okay, mamas, y'all kind of slowed down with questions. Y'all got any more?
You want me to
Any
go over
more?
my notes real quick and make sure I get it
Yeah,
all
go
in?
over your notes real quick. You
All right,
have
so we
you
gave
went off the notes.
never do. We always fly by the seat of our pants. So we gave the resources, the website resources for the dyslexia and the dysgraphia and the learning disability type curriculums early on. Another curriculum that is really, really good for the hands-on type learning. I love Apology of Science. That kind of also helps reinforce and answer that question of why. They got to figure that out. Um, Also, there's some online resources that can definitely help when you get to high school to find electives that they may be interested in, but also provide some good structure for you whenever you have to document that elective. iExcel.com, that's more elementary. Then there's Udemy, Udemy.com. That is certain type of like coding and computer stuff, professional skills. Mamas, you may actually like that one too. Coursera.org, and then edx.org. Those
Mhm.
are also, some of them are free, some of them you can get college credit for. Just depends. Some of them you can get certifications, licensing, all different types of programs, all different types of subjects. Awesome for a high school resource. Um, then for those that are going to do the ACT, I would recommend, especially with a child who has ADHD or just getting into high school, maybe do a pre-ACT to kind of figure out where you're starting at around 8th or 9th grade, and then maybe do again at 11th grade if you're still working towards certain things and goals, maybe again in your 12th grade year. But I would do kind of like just a baseline to see where you are around 8th or 9th grade. Also, I love dual enrollment, but a lot of the dual enrollment, programs, you have to have a 21 or higher on your ACT score. Some of them are eliminating that, some of the online schools. So just, do your research and stuff with that. But if you can get them into dual enrollment, even with like a small, like an English course or a history course or something like that, that's going to help you in a lot of different ways. They will love that. And CLEP program. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. So you can check those out at the library and research if CLEPs are going to work for you, and where to find the coursework and where to take the tests and stuff like that. This I found was accelerated distance learning. That's kind of with the CLEP, and it kind of gives you a plan of how to go ahead and tackle two things at one time with
Mhm.
getting some college credits. Um, Free money for college for dummies. Again, most of these I think we got at the library, and then we loved them so much we ended up getting them. Winning scholarships for college. And there are some programs that are available for kids with ADHD, autism, also whatever their interests and stuff are. If anybody on here has a high schooler that is around the age of 14, 15, 16, that has been diagnosed with autism or has an official documented diagnosis, then you want to check into transition services through vocational rehab. They will do an initial assessment to find out what your child's good at, their strengths, weaknesses, and a best route, whether they're going to train them for a job or they're going to help and provide assistance and support for them going through a college program, whether that's associates, vocational, whatever that is, whatever that child's interest in, and they may be able to pay for it 100%. So that's a resource.
That's awesome.
And then what is that? Writing scholarships, winning scholarships essay.
Right, a winning scholarship essay.
Some book resources and YouTube resources that are good for adolescent teenager kids. Tony Atwood, he deals a lot with adolescents with autism on the spectrum, all different kinds. He talks about the life skills, the social skills, prepping them for different stages of life. There's a YouTube channel, Live on Purpose, and they have some encouraging programs, YouTube podcasts, whatever, for kids with ADHD and moms with kids with ADHD. Just a little clue here: if your child has ADHD, likely either you or your spouse or both have some ADHD tendencies, or a loving family member with all of the above.
Yes.
Supplements are good. I'm not going to recommend or diagnose any supplements. You're going to have to research those out. Be careful if they're water soluble, fat soluble, ages, if there's hormones involved in the supplements. A couple that we did with Eric, we wanted to support detoxification. We wanted to support good rest. We wanted to support just a good energy level, consistent energy level throughout the day, not too many spikes. Watch excessive sugar, because you're going to deal with excessive spikes, and then you're going to deal with behavior crashes, meltdowns, things like that. So all the sugary drinks and foods and stuff like that, we did Epsom salt baths about once a month with him. You could do it sooner. Just know that it's going to create some bowel issues if you do it more frequently than that. 5-HTP, melatonin gummies, folic acid. Pycnogenol is really, really good for attention deficit disorder. You can look at that at, I guess, about age 6, 7, 8. Just try little bits of it, and maybe you want to, it's a supplement. You may want to try it first and see how you react to it, to see, how your child may. Vitamin C, these kids, a lot of times toxins build up in their system, and their little cells are just struggling to try to get that stuff out of their system, and that can cause them to be foggy headed, sleepy, lack of energy, and not being able to focus on their schoolwork. So if you have, good fruits and vegetables, lots of water, not milk, not Cokes, not Capri Suns, Gatorade, any of that, they're actually getting water and they're taking good supplements, then their cells can flush that stuff out and they can focus a lot more. Methylated B12s, methylated folic acid, their bodies, that's already broken down in a stage that their bodies can assimilate it and add it in better and take it into the cells and use it better. And a lot of these kids, they need methylated everything, methylated medications, whatever that is.
Methylated everything. Yeah.
And ginger and turmeric. So I love ginger and turmeric. That ginger is good for the stomach, the digestive system. Turmeric, the two of them together are great at tackling random inflammation in the system. For us, Eric also had some autoimmune issues that were affecting his autism. He had a second autism or autistic regression that he was not supposed to have. And then we found out at that time that he had inflammation that was attacking his brain. So that's why it's very important to stay with your healthcare provider, your pediatrician, to make sure that maybe occasional labs are done. If something changes, something gets worse, something comes out of left field, always check in with them and say, hey, this is not typical. Can we take a second look, see if there's something going on internally that we're just not aware of? I don't want to get into huge medical expenses, but I mean, your mama, when something is not right and we need to address that. We talked about curriculum, engaging them, hands-on, manipulatives, field trips. Be creative. I mean, again, even with high school, if they have interests, if they want to go work on ships, or if they like airplanes, if they are whatever they're interested in. Hannah at one time was interested in the medical field, so through different connections, we arranged for her to shadow a neurologist for the day to see if that was, really what she was interested in. Be creative. and talk to other mamas. You know, they may come up with some great brainstorming ideas that you never thought of because you're too deep in the trenches with it and overwhelmed, but they have an outside perspective. Group reading. Eric, I think I said earlier, struggled with reading, didn't like to read. So we would have agreements with each other. I'll read this, you read this, you read this, you know, and then just do it consistently each and every day. Offer encouragement. You did so great, whatever that is. And this is a huge thing, is these kids, because again, they all get, it's interpreted that they're being obstinate, defiant, argumentative, whatever that is. And they really just don't know how to express their lack of understanding with whatever's going on, or know how to formulate a question, or even know how to ask for help. Eric, I can't tell you how many times he would get into trouble with something, and I was like, son, why didn't you just ask for help? And he's like, well, I realized he just didn't know how to formulate that question of, how do I ask for help? I don't even know what I'm asking for. But I love these books. This is the Thinking Toolbox. Oops, wrong way. Thinking Toolbox. And then the Fallacy Detective.
Yes.
There we go. So, you know, I love them. So they're kind of come across as a little bit cartoonish, but it's not. They are packed full of information. But it's, sometimes we would have to sit down and just logically, okay, let's talk this through. Well, and it helps them to recognize you're not putting forth a good argument. Maybe we need to formulate our question a little bit differently, or that's some faulty logic. I'm going to call you on that one. But it also helps them. So it helps in communication. It helps in negotiation. It helps in getting them to think and reason and logic and evaluate things and get more comfortable with it. But then it also helps them to recognize faulty logic and faulty reasoning that may be coming at them from another direction, because these kids can be really susceptible to manipulation, intimidation, victimization, you know, where people are just, oh, they're naive, they don't understand, you know, I can sneak in here and do whatever. So it helps them to really think about words and communication and the logic and the reasoning, and maybe, oh, I need to have a red flag going on, something maybe, you know, about to transpire here. But I love it. I love. So they're not just fussing and arguing all the time. They have to present a logical argument of why or why not. And then I love allegories, because allegories are sneaky ways to get certain points and principles of just life into them, you know, help them to understand certain concepts and things. I love Pilgrim's Progress. You know, everybody has struggles in life. None of us are immune to that. And sometimes we don't always respond to it the best way. And, you know, but that's not the end of the world. And we can regroup, we can come back at it and try again. And, you know, we all struggle with, I'm derailed, you know, I've failed, I can't get back, I can't recover, I can't whatever, you know, and we've got to get out of the I can't to, we got to find a way where we can. So I love Pilgrim's Progress. There's also, and my kids love this book even as an adult, and I've saved this for them when they have their own children one day, but Hind's Feet on High Places for Kids. And another thing with children with autism and those that struggle with learning disabilities is sometimes they don't understand the concept of heaven or even of God. And if nothing else in my life, the two things that I wanted for my kids when they grew up is, one, I wanted to have a good relationship with them, because I didn't have that with my parents and my family. And two, I wanted them to have a good understanding and relationship with the Lord. To me, if we got to adulthood and they didn't have those two things, then I was a failure on that one. If I can teach them to read, they can teach themselves the rest of this life. If I can teach them to enjoy and know where to go to find the right information, then they will have a life full of learning. But I've got to create a good foundation of relationship, one, and of an understanding and knowledge of the Lord. So, so those were those two. And Heaven Has a Floor. So it explains heaven to them, that it is a real place, that, you know, that God is a loving Father. He's not sitting there, you know, trying to get onto us for everything that we do wrong, and that He wants to have a relationship with us too. Boundaries with Kids, love that. I think I went over all of that. a college prep skills assessment. There's a free skills assessment for online encyclopedias, Wikipedias that can kind of help you plan ahead and know what your target is for that year. Thinking outside the box, document everything. Hope you don't have to vouch for all of everything that you've done, but just in case you do, document, keep a copy, a receipt for everything. If you need help getting extra time on the ACT, if your child has ADHD or other subtype of learning disability, I can help you with that. I don't know if Devin has had to work with letters and stuff like that, helping parents apply for extra time.
Yeah.
So we can help you with letters and getting the documentation that you need to do that, but you will have to have a diagnosis on paper. And then I said that about the dual enrollment. I love community activities programs, free or cheap, that can help supplement what you're already doing with your curriculum or any electives. And then pick your battles.
Yeah.
You don't have to bite everything off at once.
Yeah. Allie had a couple of good comments, and I think it's something that I'd really like to address because I think it's where a lot of mamas are, especially when they first have diagnosis going on. Let me go back to that. Let's see. You mentioned the drowning mom. My life is exactly how I want it, but I feel like I'm dancing on the edge. Let me finish the rest. I don't know where the edge is. How do I know when to focus on myself? My ADHD is currently working against me and put me into an anxiety state. I think the first thing is you've got to have a safe place and a safe person to tell that you're in trouble. Like me, me and Allie know each other. And it's okay to tell someone that you're needing some help. She's just been diagnosed. Her son has just been diagnosed in the last year. So that's a lot. That's like you're in the grieving, still in the grieving process.
Yeah.
That's a lot to take on. And you have done fabulous this year, but I don't expect you to be the veteran homeschooler. You're still new and you're still young and you're still working through probably grieving and trying, and you've been in I think you've been in that cycle of trying to help your son. You haven't had time to take care of yourself.
Yeah, you've been in fight mode for so long. Now that's become, what you know right now. Yeah, you do have to take some time to rest for yourself. I understand that because I went into fight mode for probably it was about a 2-year period trying to find out what was going on with Eric and uncover that. One diagnosis led to another evaluation, which led to another diagnosis, which led to another diagnosis. And that was like, gosh, that was over about a 4 or 5 year period. And I remember the day that Eric and he was like, Mama, something else, like one more thing. And I was like, oh no, we've just got to push away from the table and stop for a minute. We know everything that's critical. We've got plans in place for that. We're handling it. We just need a break. And a lot of times, especially since we are mamas, we put just these massive expectations on us to figure it all out and fix it and to do it quick. Well, this is not going to be a quick thing, one. And two, if you have support systems and trusted support systems that you can talk to and confide in, engage them, delegate, give them some tasks. If you need, and I would, especially if you're a single mom, you need some time away. You need about at least 4 hours a week. If you're a single parent, I'm going to say 4 hours at least a week, where you get to go to the grocery store by yourself. You get to go get your hair cut by yourself. You get to go for a walk around the neighborhood and go get ice cream by yourself.
And homeschool moms are notorious for not taking
time. And see, so what that did with me, and Devin knows this, is I literally had my body shut down on me. My brain was still going because my brain was in permanent fight mode, but my body started shutting down on me, and my health started deteriorating massively. I woke up one morning and my my left side of my body was not functioning. It was in such excruciating pain. I literally drug my leg down the hall to find my husband in the kitchen and tell him, take me to the doctor now. And I ended up getting diagnosed with lupus, an autoimmune. My body was turning on myself and taking myself out. I was the problem. And then within 6 months, all three of my kids got diagnosed with, Hannah, my youngest, got diagnosed with systemic lupus as well. It was affecting her kidneys, her thyroid, and all that. And then the two boys, Eric, I told you, the inflammation was attacking his brain. Matthew, his was his joints. We didn't realize at the time that where we were living played a huge role. It was some environmental contaminants that we were living rather close to that was affecting that. But see, if I had not been in such fight mode, and I had been getting more rest and taking better care of myself, then I wouldn't have ended up in such a severe situation very quickly with everything just decelerating. So you have to have, it took me years. We moved out of that area and I had to make a pattern of rest. You do not have to get a year's worth of schoolwork done in 3 to 6 months. You have a year to do that in. And it's actually better for kids with autism and ADHD to do just a little bit each and every day, and not to have those 3-month gaps or huge gaps between starting something new or bringing in review. You're constantly going to be doing review with them. They need that. That's that reinforcement. But small bits over a long period of time, that consistency, and then giving all of you time to rest and defrag from the day, and taking those moments to take care of yourself and let yourself calm down.
Scheduling in moments that, you can call it a teacher work day, teacher mental health day, putting yourself into the schedule, because that's important for a mama. Even if you were not homeschooling, you've got to have some time for yourself so that you can relax and recharge. And it's okay for you to look at your husband and say, hey, I've got to have some help.
Oh, yeah.
It is your right.
Or again, for the single mamas and daddies, looking to a friend, a trusted friend or family member.
I'll take your kids, you take mine. So, let's just trade out, because you've got to have it. You've got to have that time to recharge. Like today, I went to Walmart and walked the store. I had to have a little bit of time where no one was speaking to me.
And that's what I did. Those days. Well, and two, a lot of times you feel like you have to justify with a family member or friend the reason you need this time away. And like, well, I don't see anything wrong with this kid. He just needs more discipline or more spankings or whatever. And I just finally had to get to the point was, I don't really care if you understand what we're dealing with or not. I need some time away. Are you going to be that person for me right now?
Yeah.
And not wanting to be harsh, but I would rather have that tough conversation with that individual than go home and have a not so great afternoon, evening with my children and that impact them longer.
Yeah. Okay. I think Allie raised a great point. We're going to be talking about self-care on Monday, and I'm going to make sure I add that in there because I do think it's a great point. Heather, would you consider coming back and just talking about the grieving process?
Sure.
I think it would be a good one. I mean, that's a tough one, but I think a lot of mamas don't give it its due. You get into that fight or flight, and you don't address that. So maybe next month.
You don't realize what you're dealing with. You kind of beat yourself up about it because you're dealing with those death of expectations.
Yeah.
And then remind me when we do have that class to explain that I had to have a conversation about the grieving process with outside church family members about it who didn't realize what we were going through and were kind of flippant with what we were dealing with. So
yeah, I think that'll be a good subject because I mean, Allie, that may be part of what you're dealing with, is because I mean you're really only a year in. Yes, and I want you out of that fight and flight mode. Yeah, and we'll work on it.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me too. You can find me on Facebook, send me a message, call me. My number is and we will have that conversation. Ma'am?
If I put this on YouTube, I have to bleep that out.
I am so sorry. But, you know, I am there, and you do send me people, and I do talk to them because that's
I
my
do. Not
heart.
on Facebook. Yes. I
Well,
mean,
my number's all over Mobile anyway, so you don't have to blip that out. And you know why that's all over Mobile. So, anyways.
like Heather. But yeah, I am going to connect you with Allie, and I'm going to connect with Allie too. So y'all don't worry about Allie. I'm going to take care of her. Um, yeah, we're gonna find some things because mamas help mamas. Mamas are
Yeah.
important to me. Y'all don't know if you are in trouble and you feel overwhelmed, do not hesitate to contact me. I do not want you there. I don't want you there at all, because you are important and you're important to the success of your home, but you don't have to do it all and you don't have to take it on to yourself. I mean,
And
but
that's a testimony. This is a testimony actually to you, Devin, because you are the reason that I'm where I am right now. Because if I had not had you to go to at that time, this would not be a success story. This would probably be a tragedy because
so
I
Heather
didn't
knows
have.
that I love mamas.
Do
Heather,
what?
you know that I love mamas.
Yeah.
I don't like when I know a mama's upset or hurting. Does something to me. Y'all are important. Whoever you are, whether I know you in person or not, you're important. You can contact me, Devin at homeschoolhousecall.com. If you're in the groups, you can contact me there. If you need Heather's support, she is in the groups. You can tag her. She can answer your questions with special needs. We'll find you resources. Y'all are important.
Yeah.
But mamas, we're going to go because me and Heather, this is what our workshops do every time we get together. They are long
Always.
and they're awesome. And I'm looking forward to her talking to some more stuff. But anyway, we will see y'all soon and have a great night. Bye. There.